YouTube, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing a guide and showcase, or a small showcase with the new TENYI cards that's going to be coming in by Friday with the inclusion of the newer supports, which is the Fusion Monster, which is kind of neat, and this bad boy right here, or bad girl right here, which is another form of spell summon that you can go into your synchro summon, which is pretty good. And basically this is just Sword Soul supports in general. Not to mention, you have another field spell that can gain you access to a copy of Heavenly Dragon Circle and a copy of Vessel from your deck to your hand, which is kind of insane at its own right. Now, I've been testing the deck out in some variants, and well, to be honest, you can choose to run a copy of this anyways. But before we go into that one, in general, let's talk about the TENYI. So TENYI is a group of monsters that can be spell summoned to the field if you have, or if you control no monsters, or if you control a non-effect monster on the field. If you control a non-effect monster in the field, you can banish this effect, and then they can either banish a card, spell summon a monster from your deck to the field. The other effects during battle phase doesn't really count too much, but you prefer to use the significant ones for the TENYI archetype. Nevertheless, the newer supports, we're just going to talk about it quick and then move on towards the variants for the deck, the possible combos that we can do, and some really good tech cards for the deck, or pretty good cards that you can actually pair with this deck. So first and foremost, with regards to the newer supports, we have here TENYI Spirit Suruya. If you control a worm monster or a face-up non-effect monster, you can spell summon this card from your hand, which is pretty good. This is also a level 4 and a tuner, by the way. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a material for a worm synchro monster, you can spell summon one TENYI Link monster from your extra deck. Then you lose life points equal to the Link rating times 1,000. So if you summon a Link 4 to the field, you'll be deducted 4,000 life points directly for a free body on the field, which also we'll talk about the targets that you can actually do with this monster. The next one we have here is, well, let's talk about the field spell first. Then Infinity. When this card is activated, you can add one Vessel or one Heavenly Dragon Circle from your deck to your hand. You can tribute one worm monster, then target one monster on the field, destroy it. So another good form of this removal as well, if going second. Once per turn during the end phase, you can send this card to the graveyard, and if you do, place one Flawless Perfection of the TENYI directly from your deck face up in your field zone. So we'll talk about the other field spell, which is this one here. So the effect of this one is all non-effect monsters on the field are unaffected by monster effects. Once per turn, if your opponent spell summons an effect monster while you control a face-down monster or a non-effect monster, you can draw 2 cards. So that's an additional 2 cards on top of your draw. So that's a pretty good advantage that you can actually get by just having this card face up on the field. That, of course, if you met the requirements of a face-down monster or a non-effect monster, you draw 2 cards, which is pretty good. Next up, or last card I mean, for the newer supports for the TENYI is TENYI Spirit Mula Adhara. So this is generic level 1 tuner and plus non-tuner on the field, which is easy enough to summon to the field. If this card is synchro summoned and 2 or more worm monsters are in your graveyard and or banished, you can add one field spell from your deck to your hand. So you heard that correctly. Any sort of field spell that you have, this card can actually search it. So it's a basic terraforming at a sense, and it's easy enough to summon if you get the right materials on hand during your starting phase. While a non-effect monster is face up on the field, this card gains these effects, cannot be destroyed by an opponent's card effects, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and you can make a second attack during each battle phase, which is pretty insane. Now, typically, the Draco Berserker of TENYI is somewhat of a, well, it can attack twice on the same turn, but it needs to attack a monster, whereas this boy right here can just attack during the same battle phase, which is kind of insane. So if ever you wipe clean your opponent's field, you can just directly attack them for 6,000 damage, which is crazy enough. So with that, that's the newer supports. I would advise, if you're running TENYI purely with Sword Soul, and I think that's the best variant for the TENYIs, because of course they are worm monsters nevertheless. So with regards to the Ashuna, 3 copies of course, because you can spell summon another body from your deck to the field. 2 copies of the Vishuddha, another form of removal. Then you have, of course, the new Saruya. You definitely need 3 copies of this. This is one of your best cards to start off your game. 2 Shatana in some other variants that I've seen, but you can run with 1. It's not really a big problem. Then we have the Adhara. The Adhara, basically you can run 3 copies or 2, doesn't really matter. As long as you run 2 or 3 copies, it's pretty good. This also retrieves back any banished War Monster that you can get and add it back to your hand. You can choose to add any of those. Then Infinity, you can choose to run 1 copy of this if you choose to, of course, to gain access to a copy of Heavenly Dragon Circle or a copy of Vessel. 0 to 1 copies depending on your build. If you're running Sword Soul, it's up to you if you want to run this, but so far so good. Having an access to Heavenly Dragon Circle is another good card to have. The reason for this is we'll talk about it in a bit. But yeah, you can run 1 copies of this if you want. With regards to the copy of Vessel, 3 copies at most if you're running Sword Soul TENYI. The reason for this is send 1 War Monster directly from your deck to the graveyard. Typically, you can just send a copy of one of the TENYI monsters. The next one is Heavenly Dragon Circles. You tribute 1 War Monster and add 1 War Monster from your deck to your hands. Typically, any variant of choice, like the Sword Soul Long Yuan, the Mu Yi, or even the Taya will be the best choice for this. Or another good choice is basically Protoss, another form of Floodgate with regards to the upcoming meta. And then with regards to the next field spell, 1 copy of Flawless Perfection. Some people are running 1 copy of Berserker of the TENYI, which is a non-effect monster with 3k attack. It's just pretty good as a really good beatdown card, but it's up to you if you want to use this, of course. The most significant ones here is the copy of Monk of the TENYI, because this is basically your non-effect monster that you tend to have on the field. Berserker of the TENYI, of course, another good form of removal if ever your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, or typically any monster effect, and then you can just banish that card instead. Although the effect will go through nevertheless, but having a form of removal is still pretty good. And then, of course, the copy of Mula Adhara. I really want 2 copies of this in some variants that I have. But in some cases, since your extra deck is very tight already, I would advise just go with 1 copy, I mean. But yeah, I would like to have 2 copies of this if ever I would be blessed with 2 copies. Next up, with the other TENYI monsters, I would go with the copy of, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but yeah, anyways, this is one of your best targets. And in Master Duel, this is just an SR. So while you control a face-up non-effect monsters your opponent controls cannot target effect monsters for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target effect monsters on the field with card effects. Another good form of protection for your monster. Then, quick effect, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, spell summon 1 token on the field. That is a level 4 Worm monster, and it is also a light that you can actually use for a synchro summon. Then, lastly, we have the Shaman of the TENYI, 1 form of card that can gain access to 1 TENYI or 1 Worm monster in the graveyard to your side of the field. So that is basically your 10 TENYI cards that you want to use with a Sword Soul. Let's talk about, forgot about the Heavenly Dragon Circle. You can choose to run a copy of this, of course. Even a 1 copy is good enough, to be honest. So that's basically it. Yeah, that is your showcase and the number of copies that you run with the deck. Let's move on to the variants that I have for you for Master Duel. Alright? Okay, so for our variant for the TENYI cards. So this is Sword Soul TENYI, classic TENYI support, or the TENYI variant that is very prominent before in the earlier days of Master Duel. So typically, the only thing that has changed here is 1 copy of Vessel of the Dragon Circle. I wanted to run 3 copies of this, but since our main deck is a bit congested and I don't want to exceed like 43, so I just settled with 41 with 1 Vessel and 1 copy of Heavenly Dragon Circle. I wanted to remove the TENYI Infinity, but just to play with this for a bit, I can just choose to remove this once this is in Master Duel. But so far, I'm having fun with the TENYI Infinity. My god, his name is just so annoying. But anyways, 3 copies of the Saruya and your typical cards. Oh yeah, by the way, so the Protoss is the one that I was talking about earlier. So with regards to the monster, once you get a copy of Heavenly Dragon Circle, you just tribute one Worm monster, and then you can gain access to a copy of Protoss. So this deck typically can actually floodgate your opponent with two attributes. One will be light, and the second one would be dark. The dark is typically your generic Protoss on the field, your typical floodgate for or way back. So that's your automatic dark monster in the field. The next one will be typically the Xiao Feng. Now, Xiao Feng can easily be summoned to the field by the help of the copy of Baxia on the field, sacrificing this for a synchro summon with a copy of either the Adhara on the field. That makes it a level 9. With regards to the Dark, which is a pretty good counter to the upcoming new meta, which is Malice. So Protoss will be your go-to card for this. Not to mention, regards to the newer synchro monster that can fetch you a hefty amount, that can fetch you a pretty good field spell. We'll talk about the field spells that you can actually target with this card. But yeah, that's one of the best things that this deck can actually do. But that is your Sword Soul variant. With regard to the deck list, it will be in the comment section as always for you guys to check out. Alright, so next variant, let's talk about Primite. Alright, so Primite is another variant that you can actually use with the Tenyis. The reason for this, they can summon a non-effect monster in the field, which primarily synergize quite well with the Tenyis. I've seen some variants where people are running 2 copies of Shatana, but I do prefer just running 2 copies of Muyi rather than the Shatana, because I choose to get the advantage of gaining access to a copy of Emergence or even a +1 from the Muyi after you synchro summon this. So it's up to you if you want to run 2 copies of Shatana or 2 copies of Muyi. But yeah, never gonna be removed is a copy of Protoss. You will have 1 brick here, which is the Mystery Shell Dragon, which is not too bad because you can just gain access to this with a copy of Primite Roar. If you don't have the Roar, you can gain access to it from the Lordly Load. And yeah, basically have this one in your graveyard, and if ever this card is in your graveyard with the vanilla monster, you can use the effect as well, which is pretty good. Yeah, we're having a Yangtze trap card as well because you have a copy of Shiwen here if ever you can. So with that is your TENYI Primite. Like I said, deck list will be in the comment section below. And lastly, let's move on to the last variant for this deck. Alright, so for the last variant, I'm not really too sure about this typically because with regards to the Sword Soul, they have some locks with regards to synchro summoning. It's not really like a big problem with regards to synchro summoning because Ryuji's doesn't really do any synchro summoning. But I think you will be locked into Worm monsters if you're gonna use the TENYI monsters, if ever that would be the case. Or yeah. You cannot spell summon for the rest of the turn except Worm monsters. So that's one downside with this. So far, I've tested this out. It was kind of working though, so it's up to you if you want to use this. But yeah, it's up to you. If you have these cards, I know that these cards are UR. But anyways, that is the TENYI and Ryuji. Like I said earlier, deck list in the comment section below. So with that, these are the 3 variants that I've looked up so far and I've made. So let's move on to the next topic, which is of course, well, tech cards for the deck. So let's move on to that topic. Okay guys, so this is typical tech cards for the TENYI because TENYIs are basically worm monsters, and worm monsters are the best synergy with Sword Soul. So there's not much that you can actually do with this, but with regards to talking about the field spell, we have a lot of good choices here. So this bad boy right here gains you access to 1 field spell from your deck to your hand. Now you have a variety of field spells that you can actually gain access to. So one of which will be the TENYI Infinity, if ever you'll have this, which is pretty good in a sense, gaining access to your vessel or whatever, or gaining access to Flawless at the end. Nevertheless, it's still a pretty good card, but +2 is always going to be pretty handy sometimes. Then we move on to some of the, well, toxic in a sense type of cards. One of which will be Summon Breaker. Now, Summon Breaker during the main phase, or main phase 1, if the turn player successfully conducts their 3rd summon of a monster this turn, it becomes the end phase. Now, typically this can be played around. You can just move towards main phase 2, you skip your battle phase, of course. Nevertheless, it's up to your opponent if you're allowing them to move forward to main phase 2. But regardless, that's the only way that you can actually bypass the summon breaker effect. But yeah, like I said, if the turn player successfully conducts their third summon of the monster this turn, it becomes the end phase. So that's one way to actually like auto win if ever that would be the case. If ever they won't go into main phase 2. So summon breaker is one of the another good card that you can actually get. Next one would be Walls of the Imperial Tomb. Gain access to your Horus line. You have additional bodies in the field that are level 8s and pretty strong. Next one will be a copy of Chicken Game. Draw one. Then we'll have also another Floodgate card, which is the Necro Valley. Now take note, this will also shut down your Shishao if ever it would be on the field, because you can't also move anything from the graveyard at that point. Nevertheless, really good floodgating card if ever your opponent is running Malice and they use their Bishils to, you know, get the advantage from the Malice trigger effect. Another one is a pretty good card as well, by the way. So Fire Prison, we used this one before in the Link event. I don't know which Link event was it, but I used this one before. So if any Link monsters are on the field, neither player can Link summon a Link monster with a lower Link rating than the highest Link rating on the field. Monsters cannot attack except Link monsters. Apply these effects while 2 or more Cyber Link monsters are on the field. If you already have the Link 4 on your field, this would be a pretty good card to have. But it's up to you though. If your opponent remove that monster on your side, then you'll have to abide by these rules if ever they summon a higher Link rating on their field. So that would be one downside as well. But nevertheless, Fire Prison is another good card as well. And lastly, we have the Sangen Summoning. Now, we have only one copy of this in Master Duel. Now, why am I even choosing this? Because if ever you're going first, you are bound with the Sword Soul play, which is not too bad, I would say. But if you are going second, this is one of your best, closers for the game. Get this, get a copy of one of your Tenpai monsters, and then you pop off, win the game at that point on. It's kind of like working with Sky Strikers, but I think Sky Strikers with Tenpai is way better. Nevertheless, that is one of your best field spells that you can actually get from the copy of the Mula Adhara. So that is basically it for the tech cards for this newer supports. Let's move on to the combos. Now, the combos is just straightforward, but yeah, I'll talk about it in a bit. All right, so let's go. All right, guys, so here we are with the combo. This is pretty much very simple, but yeah, I will talk to you about what you can actually do with this simple combo with a copy of Saruya and a copy of Ashuna. So let's just say we go for Ashuna. If you go Moyi, whatever, this is one of the best lines that you can actually do. So with Ashuna on the field, you link off into a copy of Monk. You can use the effect of Ashuna next, or you just spell summon first the Saruya. Either way, not really a big deal. Then with this, go effect for Ashuna. Spell summon a Worm monster from your, or a TENYI monster from your deck to the field. Go for Shatana for the purpose of this combo. There you go. Shatana field. You can go into a copy of Baxia, Shishao gaining access to Ataya, whatever, or a Muyi, if ever you have an additional Worm monster on hand. A copy of Draco for a banish effect, or for the purpose of this combo, let's go with a copy of Mula Adhara. Mula Adhara on the field gains us a copy of the field spell. So Mula Adhara first, Chain Link 1 because it adds, and then Chain Link 2 Saruya because it spell summons a monster from the extra deck. So with that, we go for the Link 4. Or you can choose to summon Shaman if you wish. But for this purpose of this combo, go for the Link 4. Mula Adhara, you can choose one of these field spells if ever you want. But take note, you're locked in to Worm monsters only. So another downside for that one. So yeah, it's up to you if you want to use this, by the way. But the best choice for this is going to be Summon Breaker, of course. But you know, for the purpose of this combo, let's go for Infinity. Go for Infinity. Gains us access to Heavenly Dragon Circle, or go for Vessel, whatever you like. But for the purpose, let's go for Heavenly Dragon Circle here. And with this, go for Monk or Tribute Monk. Gains us a Worm Monster. If you have another Worm Monster, go for Lung Yuan, Muyi because we have a normal summon. Or, better yet, we go for a copy of Protoss, which is pretty good. So with this, you can go for the effect. Banish that, that, and that. And there you have it. So that is typically your board right there with the 3 monsters. That might not be that much, but that is one of the simple combos for this deck. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, same combo, same 2 cards as what we have earlier. So let's do the same thing. Ashuna on the field first. That's it. Monk then. That's good. Spell summon the monster again. Surya on the field. With this, Ashuna banish. Spell summon again the Shathana. Shathana on the field. We go for a copy of. Yeah, let's go for this. That there. Effect. And then use the effect. Spell summon the Link 4. There you go. And with that, we go into a copy of Infinity again. Go into that. Add a card on hand. And we go for Heavenly Dragon Circle. Dragon Circle here. Tribute the Monk. Get a copy of Taya. Because we haven't normal summoned, of course. So normal summon the Taya there. Banish 1 card. I would just banish Monk. Alright. Summon the token. Use the effect. Go for a copy of. Let's go for Xishao. Then Xishao, add 1 card. And Taya, dump 1 card to the graveyard. You can choose to dump a copy of Adhara here. And with Xishao, you can gain access to the Emergence. Add to hand, then use the effect. Go with a copy of Protoss. So that's it. Protoss to the field. I think I'm gonna banish this, and Adhara. The purpose why I have Shathana here is because I can just summon a token on the field, and then if that token is destroyed, I can summon the non-effect monster, and then that's basically it. 2 simple combos that you can do with this. So, let's move on to the last combo, guys. Alright, so this is the last combo, guys, and this is for Anti-Nibiru. So I've tried to look for a proper combo for the Anti-Nibiru one. This is the best one so far. But yeah, if you have some easier combos that you have other than 2 cards, why not, right? But anyways, Anti-Nibiru with a Taya and a copy of Saruya. Let's go. So Taya first on the field, then we spell summon a copy of Saruya next. That's 2 summons already. We go for a copy of Baksha next. Summon Baksha to the field. Trigger 1 copy of Saruya, and then Taya next, dumping a copy of. Or we go for Taya first and then Saruya next. I think that would be the best chain possible. But anyways, that's our 2 chains. Dumping a copy of Ashuna in the graveyard. Then with Saruya, spell summon the Monk here. So with this, use the effect of Ashuna. Banishing itself, spell summoning a copy of Adhara. That's it. Use the effect of Baksha, target our Monk. Spell summon a copy of Taya next. Now at this point, if ever your opponent doesn't nib here, so you can just use the 2 monsters for a copy of Xiaofeng. So there you go, Xiaofeng on the field, and now you are Nibiru proof. You can use the effect of Taya next. Banish 1 card. It's banish backs, yeah. There you go. Pretty good. Use the effect of Adhara here. Get a copy of Ashuna back to our hand. Okay, so we'll go for a copy of this. Grandmaster Shi Shao. Use the effect of Shi Shao next. Getting a copy of Emergence or a copy of Long Yuan. Going for another Worm Monster. It's up to you. Or going for the Blackout. Either way, it's still pretty good. But for this, let's go for a copy of Emergence here. Add to the hand. And with this, use the effect. Get a copy of Protoss. That's it. That's the best course of action there. So that, Protoss on the field, banish, banish, banish. And that's it. So Xiao Feng is anti-light and Protoss is anti-dark. So your opponent can't spell summon any dark, your opponent can't spell summon any light. Typically that's what you can do with the 2 cards. If you have the other cards remaining, why not use it, of course. But anyways, that is 3 combos. There's 3 simple combos that you can do with this deck. Tell me your thoughts. Hopefully we can do Malice before Friday. I'll try my best to do that one. If not, maybe I can release that one whatever. Maybe Sunday. I don't know. But anyways, that is basically it for today, guys. Hope you enjoy this kind of content. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Or see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.